Alright, you know what it is. Really bad breakdown of the chapter. So Hanying wakes up. The key, but actually not the key, is missing. She meets up with some people, and that goes really badly. Then she meets up with another guy, and that goes slightly less badly. Commandant and Liv are also in the city. Hanying gets a tour and learns that the entire city is ruled by clankers, but not Hanying because she's one of the good ones. People are mad. Machines are the problem. Armor-piercing rounds are the solution. Hanying meets up with Ulia and Dimitri, and she tries to go talk to Veronica, but, Veronica's upset because her Nakama died, and she doesn't care. Ulia can't keep her mouth shut. Everyone gets captured. Alexei is two dudes, except one of those dudes really sucks. A whole lot of people die. The bard fights the dragon lady. Some stuff happens. The dragon lady's husbando dies, and balance is returned to the force. There we go. That wraps that up. Alright, but yeah, then we get like 2 or 3 new characters, and then everybody else is recurring. Starting off with the lady of the chapter, which is Hanying. I'm going to be real here. I actually think Hanying is the weakest character in this chapter, like character-wise. In terms of strength-wise, she's probably one of the strongest, because she gets up here, she beats up Veronica. Actually, Veronica's loss is actually really disrespectful. Imagine that. You go to the city looking for your friend. You find out your friend is dead. So then you tweak out, you take over the city, and then someone else comes along. They stole your dead friend's job, and then they beat you up, and they send you back to corporate. Veronica is having a tough time. Rip. But yeah, like, Hanying's main motif is talking about coexistence between, like, humans and machines. But as far as she's concerned, like, personally, she's been doing that. That's not, like, a shocking thing for her. She's from Kowloon, where they, like, already do that. And her personally, she lives with Pulau, so there's nothing really going on there. Ulia, however, is a far more interesting character, because we can see how she, like, changes throughout the chapter. Like, we see how she starts as this, like, timid little girl, even though her sprite is exactly the same, but she sees her father get executed, and she realizes that that's like a result of him being too passive, right? He was too go with the flow, and he never stood on anything, and, it eventually ended up biting him in the butt, because someone took the city from under him and, took him off the map. And after that, she went into hiding. But she didn't just go into hiding physically, she also went into hiding mentally. Kind of had some type of trauma, I don't know what to call it, but in the chapter, we see that, like, the other characters realize how intelligent and capable she is. Like, the resistance leader, he keeps coming in like, hey, we could use your help. Commandant's like, hey, I know how intelligent you are, I could definitely use your help. And like, when you read the lines of what she's actually saying when they ask her for help, she downplays herself like 100% to stay out of the conflict and to stay, like, keep her head down and stay out of it. Because she wants to maintain that air of, I don't know anything, leave me alone. If I ignore the problem, then the problem won't come to me. And she kind of tells Dimitri to do the same thing, right? When he tells her how dangerous the city's getting, she's like, just keep your head down, stay out of the city, don't go back there, preserve yourself, right? To keep yourself safe. And that's kind of how she lived her entire life, up until she gets to the very end of the chapter. But then Dimitri has his moment where he's like, nah, I've decided I want to do something a bit more selfish, right? I want to help everyone, and that's like his selfish desire, because he knows that it's kind of dumb to do that, but he's like, I don't care, I'm going to do it anyway. So then at the very end of the chapter, she's like, this person that I value so much is going to sacrifice themselves, really, to help and save everybody else here. I can't really do this keeping my head down thing anymore, because if I keep my head down, we're going to die anyway. Like, she stayed neutral to stay out of the conflict to protect herself, but now she's like, oh, I'm going to die either way, so to help her friend, she has to help herself. So she finally decides to, put the big brain to use, and her group end up putting up a fight against the mechanoids. But in simple terms, I just really like her character arc. She was supposed to be this like quiet, gentle person who like keeps her head down to stay safe. And over the course of the chapter, she learns that sometimes hiding is not the best way to protect yourself. She's like, if I ignore my problems, then maybe the problems will just not find me. But sorry, dude, those problems are coming at you whether you like it or not. So she learns that she can, in fact, stand up for herself. Ooh, that was a bad choice of words. She learns that she can face her problems head on without compromising, that caring nature that she has. Moving on to Dimitri, I also really liked him, and he serves as like this kind of foil to Veronica, so I'll probably end up jumping to Veronica like halfway through. So Dimitri is one of the awakened machines in the city, and one interesting thing that we see is that there are apparently levels to being an awakened machine. It's not like a light switch where you're either awakened or you're not. There's like degrees of awakening, because you have like the little sniper machines who are like, the very base level of awakened, and then you have Dimitri who's like mid-level awakened, and then I take it above that you have like, fully awakened, which is be like the tarot card members of the church who are like full 100% realized. Because, the more you awaken, the less you have that machine logic to you. You start acting on more human emotions. Because even though Dimitri is awakened and is able to like think for himself, he still has this underlying logic in the things that he does. He's like, I don't understand. That's not logical. That doesn't make sense. Right? He struggles to like put his thoughts into words because, he doesn't grasp the concept of like emotions yet. He's still like learning and growing. Okay, so like I was saying, I kind of see Dimitri as like a foil to Veronica in like an ideological sense, because these are some like things that you hear Veronica say throughout the chapter. She is a hypocrite in just about every way that she can be. She is. She hates the fact that humans killed machines for like senseless violence for no reason, and she ends up doing the exact same. She throws the city into war, and like her plan was to start a war with humanity, and think of how many machines would have died in that. And she knows how many machines would have died in that, because when Dimitri actually calls her out on this, he calls her out on this, well, and Hanying, they both call her out. And they're like, how many machines would die in your war with humanity? And she's like, well, that's the thing. Machines don't actually die. Machines have no afterlife. They have no souls. If you just download their consciousness into another body, then they can come back to life like nothing ever happened. And to me, it feels like she has this complete disconnect, this like disregard for the soul that these machines are developing, because that's like the point of being awakened, is you start to develop this soul, and you essentially stop being just a machine. You stop being just the code. When you fully awaken, you start becoming, personality wise, no different from a human. And you can see that with like most of the church members. The really high level awakened ones, they don't act like machines really at all. They act super irrational, like people, right? Schultz, super hatred. He's the hater, right? He hates everyone. Super irrational. It doesn't make any sense. But he's like, I don't care if it makes sense or not. I want this to happen. Like a motivated person. You have Nanami, who's motivated by like, I want to help people, even though the way she's going about trying to save the future is the most inefficient and roundabout way, to the point where no one else agrees with how she's doing it. But she's like, I don't care. I choose to do it the way I choose to do it. And then, of course, you have Veronica, who's making all these contradictory decisions. But you see, they're all operating off of, emotions, illogical thought processes. Dimitri even tells her, Veronica, you can't do this. Don't kill my friends. Like when they're in the dumping grounds, and she takes over the awakened machines, like she hacks into them. Dimitri's like, you can't do this. This is murder. And she's like, it's not murder because murder is just a thing that humans made up. You can't really kill a machine, therefore machines can't commit murder. And then at the end of the chapter, when Dimitri dies, he's like, Ulia, do mechanoids really have souls? And if so, will I meet 39 on the other side? And that's supposed to be that final goodbye, because yes, when the mechanoids get awakened, they become more than just that code. And so when they die, they lose that thing that made them that awakened machine, right? Their soul, that soul that they developed, dies along with it. They can't come back. I just kind of like how Dimitri and Veronica have these like opposing views towards machines and whether or not they're really alive. Let's see. There's also 39. He's just, the machine that came before Dimitri, who kind of sparked everything off. He doesn't do anything in the chapter. Rip. There's also this Roach, the Emperor. And yes, I say Roach because he is nearly impossible to kill. Because he should be dead. And that's not even me saying that. Two characters in the chapter clarify that he should be dead. And one of those characters was him. But yeah, he's alive. And an interesting thing is that when Veronica is talking in the cutscene and she's like swears revenge, she says she's gonna hunt down the Emperor's shards. So that makes me think maybe it's not the full Emperor. Maybe what happened is when Nanami tried to kill him, because Nanami definitely tried to kill him, alright? She tried to take that man off the census, alright? He betrayed the family, he betrayed the church, so, he had to go. Get him up out of here. But yeah, maybe after she tried to kill him, instead of dying, he just like split himself up into pieces. And then we also see that he's doing some really funky stuff in the city. I was very meticulous about the word I said. I never said he was trying to recreate Hyperreal. I said he was trying to recreate the power that the frame once had. And that's because in the stage, you see this note that's, on this thingy here. And it's talking about how he wants to copy the power that the frame had to pass that higher dimensional filter. Which, does make sense because when you go back to when he awakened, you do see an image of Ishmael. So he probably did end up seeing some type of prediction about the tower showing up. Oh, and fake Lee did escape. Fake Lee did not die. Oh, so we also see how he actually managed to pull this entire scheme off. So he was conspiring with Wheel of Fortune, which is another one of the tarot cards. We haven't seen them yet. Well, no, yeah, we have. It's the dude with the big wheel. He was conspiring with Wheel of Fortune. We don't know what he said to maybe convince Wheel of Fortune. No idea. But we do know how he convinced Zero. And what this made me think about is how the church split back in Her Last Bow. And now you can see exactly how the church would have split. Or how easy it would have been for the church to split. Because Zero is the number one Nanami Glazer on Earth, right? No one simps for Sage harder than Zero. And it only took Schultz like a half a minute of conversation before she was willing to go against like Nanami's principles. Because she says it, like she's very clear. She's like, hey, Nanami hates you. Therefore, I hate you. And I'm not going to entertain anything you say. And then he opens his mouth for 3 seconds and she's like, well, okay, fine, I'll help you. He managed to punch through all of Zero's love for Nanami. And we hear back in Her Last Bow that Nanami was missing from the church. So in that future, Nanami wasn't even around. How easy would it have been for him to convince her to do something a bit more drastic? Because Zero didn't admit to what she did until Nanami came back to the church and then made her admit to what she did. If you maybe allow the situation to develop, Zero might like get to the point where she goes, Sage doesn't exist in any future with humanity. Therefore, get rid of humanity, and there will only be futures left where Sage exists. Boom, we're back to her last bow, and Zero has another blood diamond. So that just shows how easy it is for the church to split itself, which is why the church is going to have a civil war stocks are going through the roof. Oh, alongside my Arcana is evil stocks. Way back in Floating Reverie, there's this extremely quick scene where, what's her name? I forgot her name. Arcana. There we go. Where Arcana is talking to some mystery person, and this mystery person is saying, if the plan goes south, Justice will return back to the church. And in this case, Justice means Veronica, right? It's in the quotes, it's the title. And then we see here in this chapter, Emperor's plan goes south, and then Justice, Veronica, returns back to the church, which means that person way back when must have been the Emperor. So what that's making me think is that this plan might have been in place since Floating Reverie. And if so, that would mean that Schultz has been working in this city for at least a couple of years. We also have Nanami, who gets mentioned, and she's doing some stuff. We have no idea, but they mention that she's taking longer and more frequent trips away from the church, and that's probably because she's going around setting stuff up to hit that 0.1% chance for the future. But of course, she always has time to help out and be the savior of the plot, because she managed to send over a replica key that she just found lying in the basement somewhere. They do say that the invitation was in a much less portable form before she got her hands on it. But that's just information. I don't know what that means, because it could mean literally anything. We have Cervantes. He shows up, he drops off the key, and then he leaves. And that's like the extent of what he does. Oh, no. There's one more thing. He is allowed to reveal the existence of the church, like officially. Because most of the main characters, they know that there are mechanoids out there doing something, but they don't know that there's a dedicated organization. Because even though Hanying helps with Kowloon didn't even know that she was a mechanoid until Schultz backstabbed her. Oh my god. This. Not even a main chapter, and yet I leave with more questions than I had when I showed up. This invitation says that after someone uses the key to access it, you lose the ability to become Dominic, which, isn't too shocking, because after the first invitation was used up, he passed up on the offer, and then Dominic faded away, so you can just assume that you would lose the ability to become Dominic. But a really interesting thing is that it says that it would allow you to destroy the tower and take the core, but destroying the core would have severe consequences. And of course you got to figure out what are those consequences. But to figure out the consequences, you have to know the purpose of the tower. But like I said, I am of the opinion that the tower is some kind of beacon, right? That lets you navigate to other worlds, or maybe lets other people navigate to your world. It's like a GPS marker, or also through time too, at the same time, also through time. And that maybe the consequences would be that your world is cut off from every other world. I did cut a few things, not big things at all, literally just 4-line conversations, really short stuff. The first thing was a little scene between Lando and Sokovsky. I think that's how you say it. And it's just them when they kind of awaken 39 for the first time, and they kind of they wake him up and they go, "Oh, welcome to the world. The world is beautiful." There's also a scene with Dimitri and 39, where they're talking about the stars, where 39 is like, "Look, aren't the stars so pretty? We're gonna see those one day." And then, Dimitri's like, oh, okay, that's cool. It's just supposed to show that they had a connection a little bit beforehand, because 39 was part of the Dimitri Ulia friend group. And there's also a scene of Veronica and Alexei, but it's just like Veronica saying, oh, the Bifrost is 50% charged. And then, Alexei says, okay, and like that's it. That's the end of the scene. In the node right after that, there's also a scene with Hanying in the forest talking to Cervantes. But once again, it's nothing. It's really just, Hanying sits there mumbling until, the random gameplay section kind of shows up. And then the last one that I can think of is there's a small conversation between Asimov and Long. But I threw it away because the line doesn't really make any sense. There we go. So when they're talking about the Bifrost, Long says, wasn't that thing humanity's last hope? And I was like, what do you mean last hope? Isn't Babylonia supposed to be the last hope? So I kind of ignored it. But like, now that I think about it, over the course of this chapter, Dawn 3 has been mentioned once again. And I think Dawn 3 has been mentioned every single chapter since it was brought up in 28. And to be honest, it's kind of creeping me out, because every single other project that was mentioned from the Golden Age has been relevant to some degree. Every single one of them, right? Cathilla, that became relevant. Winter, that's relevant. Construct technology, that's relevant, right? Lunar Base, Project Arcadia. Everything from the Golden Age that gets mentioned eventually becomes relevant to some degree. Except here we are with Dawn 3, and we've talked about it, or they bring it up every single chapter, but they've never done anything with it. So that's making me think I actually need to go and reread what Dawn 3 was about, because it might actually be important. Okay, I'm back. So we have Dawn 3, right? And it's kind of like they shot these people off into space, but I don't think it's supposed to be like a colony thing, because they only sent like 40 people. And I am fairly certain 40 people is not enough for any type of genetic diversity. But yeah, right, Dawn 3. They fired these people off into space, and they ended up accelerating like on a 500-year trip at roughly 1% of light speed over to the next nearest star of Alpha Centauri. Now, of course, they're humans, so like 500 years, it's a wrap, they're gone. But I can't think why they would do something like that in the first place. Like, it just doesn't really make any sense. Because at this time, it's not like, the Earth was in danger of, collapsing due to the punishing virus, because it wasn't around yet. But you know what? Once again, the only time we see people do things that don't make sense for a larger goal that does make sense is Lee back in the tower, where he would tell himself, hey, go and do this random thing, and I promise it'll all work out for you. So I'm thinking is maybe Ishmael or someone has been manipulating events from the shadows, and they convinced the people to initiate the Dawn 3 program to shoot those people into space, because later on down the line, after 500 years, the people on the ship, maybe they learn to come back in time. So they go back in time to convince the people to start Dawn 3 so that they can go back in time. Right, kind of. Do you get what I'm saying? Kind of like the grandfather paradox, right? Like the people get shot off into space, something happens, I don't know, they hit a new planet, or they hit some cosmic rays, or they meet the punishing virus in the middle of space, and they get the power to come back in time to make sure that Project Winter gets started so that they can get their power. I don't know. Dawn 3 must be relevant to some degree, because they've mentioned it into a very uncomfortable amount of times. Whatever. I'm just rambling, and I am extremely tired, so I think this is going to be it. I don't know how to make outros. Bye.